Doctor Who Sunday, and we're going back to, well, almost the beginning. We're going to take a look at the Time Meddler. Hello and welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Shout About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Workers, Crown Royal, and my haters. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, switch on the notification bell so that you know I am releasing another video. Please do feel free to check out my other social media pages and my new independent media news outlets that I now have. They're all linked in the description for you. Thank you to everyone who's joined me already. I cannot run this channel without you. Please do keep it friendly in the chat. You voted for the Time Mandela. To vote on the current poll, please head on over to the post page where you can find it. So, the Time Meddler was written by Dennis Spooner and it aired from the 3rd to the 24th of July 1965 to an average of 8.4 million people, which surprisingly made it the lowest for average for series 2 of Doctor Who. And in all fairness, I have no clue why it was such a low rating. Maybe it was affected from the week before with Barbara and Ian, who have now left the TARDIS. Vicky says that she'll miss them both, and the Doctor seems to be sad that they are also gone. It looks like it's just going to be Vicky and the Doctor. However, Stephen appears in the TARDIS. They land in 1066 on a beach. Of course, the Doctor doesn't know that at this point, that it's 1066. The Doctor decides that he's going to go off and do a bit of exploring, going up to the village, up to the top of the cliffs. He decides that he's going to walk it. However, Stephen suggests that perhaps they climb up instead. The Doctor says that he and Vicky could do that, but they are to wait for him to reach the top. Naturally, of course, that's not going to happen because otherwise it wouldn't be Doctor Who, right? Lurking nearby is also a monk. We have no idea what he's up to. We don't find out for quite a while. The Doctor manages to make his way up to the top. He meets a lady called Edith and she gives him sustenance. He was originally going to spend the night there whilst he waited for Vicky and Stephen. However, he hears singing coming from a monastery that cuts off. So after asking Edith about it, he goes to visit that instead after learning about the year, which is, of course, as I said, 1066. The Doctor arrives at the monastery and he finds a gramophone, and immediately he gets captured. Question is, though, why on earth would the monk have a gramophone? Why on earth would he have a toaster and all these other little contraptions in 1066, where these things do not belong historically? Later, Stephen attacks one of the villagers who has seen something on the ground. The villager runs and Stephen picks it up. It's a watch. They then spend the night in the area that they had found the watch, only to be ambushed by the villagers in the morning. However, Aldrid's wife convinces the villagers that these must be the Doctor's friends, and Stephen and Vicky head off to the monastery to find the Doctor. However, they are unable to find him as the Doctor has escaped through some form of a priest hole. The Doctor returns to Edith, who tells him that Vicky and Stephen have gone to the monastery. The Doctor informs Edith that the monk is up to something and is not trustworthy. He also gives her a lot of information about what is going to happen. The Doctor then heads back to the monastery, pokes a stick into the monk's back to take him hostage. Later, we see the monk asking Aldred to make beacons, light beacons, and this makes Aldred immediately suspicious because obviously that's going to lure Viking scouts. Stephen and Vicky, who are inside the monastery, also discover that the monk has a TARDIS, though through various deductions and various actions, we find that the monk is going to destroy the Viking fleet that lands, and he is planning to meddle with history. He wants to change the history to help the Vikings win against William the Conqueror, which would be a major rewrite in history, wouldn't it? The villagers do not light any beacons and they attack the Viking scouts that had appeared. The Doctor then sabotages the monk's TARDIS by taking the dimensional control, leaving him stranded in 1066. I've only ever seen this story twice, but I'm going to talk about Peter Butterworth first. I think this was very well cast. It's a face that you perhaps wouldn't have ordinarily seen on Doctor Who. He was quite well known on the Carry On movies, so it was nice for him to turn up in Doctor Who. Must have been a nice surprise for a lot of people. I think that Peter was well cast because he brings a certain cheekiness to the character, and he also brings a certain mysterious type of attitude to it as well. You don't find out for a very long time what the monk is doing. You're left questioning that throughout the entire thing, almost. And that's a mark of a good writer as well as a good actor. I think this character is a nice, fun little addition, and it's a character really that I hope never returns to Doctor Who, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just that I think, given that what we've got now, it will get butchered, and the sanctity of this character is that he is a meddler. So therefore he meddles with time, and I just don't think that the current showrunners would be ever able to do a character like that any justice within the time frames that they set themselves for their stories. And I really think that, in the terms of a historical sense, that is also one of the biggest things that we see in early Doctor Who that is a major, major threat. And that's a fixed event in time being changed. This story was very much what I would call a historical setting, obviously, of the year, 1066. Duh, Rachel. It was a history lesson for families watching who may not have known anything particular about that year, but it was an important thing to highlight. They also use Stephen and Vicky very well in this to highlight the potential impact of the rewriting of history rather than having the Doctor explain it to them. And the rewriting of history is something that really we don't want to ever see happen realistically in real life. History should be left alone and left as it is, but it doesn't matter how much you question it or things like that. Things may potentially get changed when we're being told something in real life about history, and you don't want that to happen. It's also got a bit of a fear factor element to it. If you think about it, if you go back in history and you've got this other Time Lord in it that's meddling with time for his own benefit and to the detriment of everybody's memories who are born after that particular year, Stephen and Vicky, well, they'd speak of this fact, their memories will change. That's scary stuff. You're being forced to forget something without even realizing you're forgetting it. Vicky is an interesting companion, isn't she? She is not so much more of what I would consider to be like the damsel in distress that we got with Susan. I think maybe the writers might have learned a little bit from doing that, and they made it a little bit more headstrong and gave her a little bit more to do. And I like the fact that she is also quite distinct from Barbara and from Susan. I think that works in her favor. It makes her likable, but in a different way. Stephen is also quite distinct from Ian as well. I like the fact that he really does not believe anything that he is being told about the TARDIS. I'm not too keen on him calling the Doctor Doc, but good old Doctor nipped that in the bud extremely quickly. And that's very fitting with his character as well. And I wasn't really keen on Stephen jumping someone just for a watch. Whilst it added an interesting dynamic, I think that really came a bit out of the blue. I was never expecting that the first time I watched this. I do think that he is like Ian and not like him. There was some kind of hero worthiness in his character about him at this point. And I'm not saying that he changes, by the way, but at this point, he's just trying to establish who the character really is. I think what adds an interesting contrast is the fact that Vicky and Stephen are at loggerheads, quite a fair bit as well. Whilst we do see disagreements with the companions throughout in the TARDIS in the first two series, this one I think is different. Vicky has already been travelling in the TARDIS, and Stephen is new to the TARDIS. He's headstrong, like she is, and he doesn't take fools very lightly. And she's kind of similar in that way as well. So they butt heads naturally because of it. And I think he's well cast, Peter Purvis. I think he looked better with a beard, though, weirdly enough. Anyway, I think also this truly is the first time where we do not have Barbara and Ian, which may have affected the ratings actually, or Susan. We don't have any of the original companions for the first time, which is always quite daunting if you think about it. So they had to make it work. Yes, Vicky was already established, she'd done a few stories by that point, but she has to help establish Stephen as a long-term character too. And I think they do it right by sort of phasing out one character and introducing the other character when the other one is established. It's like a guidance type of thing. Introduce a bit early, introduce a bit later. I don't think they take too long in establishing their relationship and their dynamics and what it is that they're going to do. In fact, they do have one entire episode in this story, one entire part two, where it's just focusing on the two of them. The most likely cause of that naturally is, of course, because they did a lot of sort of filming back to back here. It was William Hartnell's day off. But because of that, the story allowed for that development because it had to. Now, one of the things that I do marvel about this story is that the companions and the Doctor get separated almost immediately, and they remain separated for almost the entire thing. That, as a plot device, is one of my favourite things. It adds much more tension to the story, and it gives the companions a big chance to shine and have a little bit more to do. And it also shows off the Doctor's intelligence without it very much so niggling away at the companions, and the story allows for it. There's just enough time, just about, in this story to do it. One of my side notes says that this is a proper history lesson. I know I mentioned that already, but I'm bringing it back. Very much so. It does maintain that it's a mystery as well throughout the entire thing. The Doctor's intelligence, showing that he deduces that it's 1066 just by a series of questions and what's going to happen next about Harold and William the Conqueror, and the way it's delivered by William Hartnell. Fantastic. Although I will say I'm not entirely sure about the Doctor revealing information to the villagers about the future. He's quite particular about things like that. However, it does play into the plot devices of the story, so I will let it slide, even though it's a negative for me. The states of tension as well from William Hartnell are fantastic in this. The states of tension, by the way, is different levels of emotion and intensity you quite often find when applying a technique like that. You're practicing lines in different ways to see what it's like without necessarily applying a method and then apply it to the performance. William Hartnell in this, he's quirky, he's intelligent and wonderfully snappy, and I think that the Doctor in this one puts a certain amount of jokiness in it as well. The Doctor is not a big fan of guns, as we also know. It made me laugh when he picks up a stick and pokes it into the monk's back, and the monk thinks that it is a gun, and William Hartnell's face just makes me laugh. He's like, this is serious. I'm dedicated to this so much that I approve of that. I think what adds a very interesting dynamic to the story as well, which seems to be the word of the day, dynamic. I do apologise, I need a thesaurus. It's the fact that there's another Time Lord in this story. That cliffhanger where Vicky and Stephen discover the monk as a TARDIS must have been an absolute shock to everyone. In this case, in this story, the Doctor is against someone from his home planet who is like him. And I just love the fact that this in itself can prove to be extremely dangerous because of what the monk is planning to do, and the Doctor naturally, of course, well, he has to put a stop to it. Now, this isn't the most intense story though, is it? Even though the monk is planning on changing history, there's a certain, and I think this is because we have a monk in it and a monastery. But there's a certain quietness around it, a certain stillness. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, actually. I think that's good. For a start, this is only a 4-part story, so it needs to be clipped and it needs to be concise, which it is. mostly maintaining history, maintaining sci-fi, and maintaining the eloquence of what a monastery and a monk should have. Even though he's up to no good, that's something that Peter Butterworth brings across extremely well, and he has William Hartnell also to play off, and they both play off each other fantastically. When you're acting, you are not acting. You are reacting to the other person who is on stage with you or on the screen or whatever is happening around you. You are reacting to that, and they react to each other extremely well. The script allowed for some comedic timing with Peter Butterworth. They're talking about the make of the TARDIS. The monk's TARDIS is, I think it was a Mark IV. And then Peter Butterworth's monk asks what the doctor's mark is for his TARDIS. And the doctor gets all snappy and tells him to mind his own business. The monk is extremely cunning in part 4 as well, but not so much so that the doctor looks completely dumb. We have no idea how the doctor is going to resolve the situation that he's in and stop the monk, which is why he was sowing the seeds, telling the villagers the future. And that's why it came in. If he hadn't have told them that, then, well, they would have ended up lighting the beacons and changing history. Like the monk had requested. Instead, the Viking scouts get attacked by the villagers. Whilst all that is going on, the doctor is taking the monk's dimensional control and leaving him stranded in 1066. Obviously, because why not? And we never know what happens to the monk in the canon of the TV stories. At least I don't recall it ever being addressed again. I don't recall. I think that the monk is a very good concept, meddling with time. It's very dangerous. Like I said, though, don't bring him back. The writer for this has done some fantastic stuff, I would say, throughout the entire story. I've talked about a fair few bits already, but I'll just mention a couple of bits that I really enjoyed in this. That's a nice little mini battle between the villagers and the Vikings. Now, I think that they could have gone ahead and potentially have done a few more of those, but because I really like the elements of focusing on what the monk is doing and the history with the story at the same time, I'm glad that the writer didn't do that. Which sounds like a conundrum, but that's just my take. He made sure that he kept you guessing all the way throughout the entire story as to what the monk was doing, why the monk was behaving the way that he was behaving, why the music cut out, why it came up that there was a gramophone, why are there so many different contraptions in 1066, and the biggest mystery, I've just said it, but I'm going to say it again, was what was the monk up to? And who was he? Just one thing though, I think before I talk about the cliffhangers quickly, it strikes me as a little bit odd that the monk is a time traveler who meddles with time. All right, that's nothing unusual, but this next bit. But he doesn't know what a priest hole is. To me, that seems a little bit odd. If he knows about history, then he knows about the buildings and science and things like that. He would know about something like a priest hole and potentially that the doctor could escape. I thought that was a bit of an oversight, but it did serve the plot as well. So maybe it just wasn't. It just seems a bit weird. Maybe I'm just reading too much into that. So other than the fact that Stephen and Vicky discovered that the monk has a TARDIS, the other cliffhangers are pretty good as well. The TARDIS discovery is the best one, okay? Hands down. But part 2 has a good one. The doctor is not in his prison cell. It's just animal skin. He's escaped through the priest hole. And the end of part 1, the cliffhanger there, the doctor finding a gramophone in the monastery and he switches it off and the gate comes down, making him a prisoner, and the monk just laughs at him, having not said much in the entire story. That's a really good cliffhanger. And the monk laughing after not saying much really intrigued me. Is this my favourite historical story? No. But I would say it's probably close up there. The Aztecs is my favorite historical story, especially from the Hartnell era. But that's what I think. Naturally, of course, though, I had to ask you, the subscribers, what you thought of this particular story. And boy, oh boy, you lot left quite a handful of comments. So thank you very much. It was very difficult to choose what comments I was going to use in this video. I'll bring myself back there. I have no idea what I just did. Okay, but I chose 3 out of all the comments. So Eddie says, Peter Butterworth was fantastic. He made the story such a classic, and he most definitely made the role his. Now, I 100% agree. He has a certain charisma around him as well. I think that makes him even more likable. The monk isn't a character that I ever feared. It was just a character that I was intrigued and puzzled by. And Peter Butterworth added to that, and the writing also adds to that as well. Bubble says, one of the early classics of Doctor Who, its well-woven story of mysteries set against the Viking invasion. William Hartnell and Peter Butterworth are on top form as the Doctor and the Monk, and it deserves to be in the 60 stories top 10. A key from start to finish. And I will say that I think that there is much love for this particular story. In the comments, there was lots of reminiscing and praise for the monk, and I would agree with all of them. And Paul Clark says, it's wonderful entertainment. Hartnell is often great on his own, but to bring in Peter Butterworth as the mischievous monk was a masterstroke. Then they realise the monk has a TARDIS. Yes, which I would agree, that is one heck of a reveal, particularly back then. It was the first time for that we ever had a character like that in Doctor Who. So what a reveal. That's fantastic. And I'm so pleased that I can just carry on and watch it. But boy, oh boy, I bet a lot of you were on tenterhooks when you saw that originally. But anyway, that's it for today. Please do let me know what you think. Chat about it, don't shout about it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Bye bye.